Also now looking back, I realized that I was already exhausted going into Liberia. It was already quite a struggle in Conakry and in Guinea, and yeah, just not an easy time. And then we decided to go through the rainforest, and it was just the more difficult route. And I should have made my point more clear, maybe, to not do this part. But yeah, it's how it was, and it's all right now. No one got hurt, and Julian and I, we are still friends, so that's good. But was just exhausting for both of us, and we both couldn't enjoy it. And we said it's the hardest thing we've ever done on a bike. And I mean, looking back, you kind of forget the pain and you kind of forget how difficult it actually was. But yeah, it's just a roller coaster. So this was definitely my lowest low so far.
Welcome to the Seek Travel Ride podcast, where we share the stories and experiences of people who have undertaken amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello, I'm your host Bella Malloy, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest for today's episode of Seek Travel Ride, Wiebke Lühmann. Now, fans of the show will recall an earlier episode featuring Wiebke, which I released just a few months ago. But what always strikes me when I interview guests who are partway through a massive journey is that their adventure is still unfolding and the conversation we share is purely a snapshot in time. Indeed, Wiebke's journey is set to take her another 6 months to complete as she continues on her Cycling South expedition from Germany all the way to South Africa. Since releasing Wiebke's episode, I've had quite a lot of listeners get in touch to find out more about this adventure of hers. So I reached out to Wiebke to see if it would be possible to get an update on her travels so far, and voila, here we are. I'm speaking to Wiebke today while she is in Benin, with the West African leg of this bicycle tour now complete. She has hit the halfway mark of this adventure, which blows my mind. That's how big it is. From here, she will head inland and travel deeper into Central Africa, leaving the coast behind as she sets off to discover a new region. I can't wait to speak to Wiebke now and find out what's been happening since we last connected. Wiebke, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Bella. Good to hear you again. And yeah, really, really excited actually to talk to you today.
I think it'll be an opportunity, Wiebke, to remind yourself just the big adventures you've had since we last spoke. If I recall correctly, you were in Conakry when we last spoke, and quite a lot has happened in that time now that you find yourself in Benin.
Yeah, that's so true.
Now, a question I normally start my show with is one I've already asked you about. So I'm going to have a little spin on that and ask you instead, Wiebke, do you remember the first adventure bike you ever rode? And I want to know what that bike was and what that first adventure was.
Yeah, I think the first adventure bike for touring, well, yeah, I guess that's what I would consider an adventure bike, was the bike I packed and took with me to Colombia in 2019, and that was a 8-bar gravel bike. And it was a pretty basic gravel bike with just a rear rack, and along the journey I put a front rack, so it's quite similar to now, changing my setup always and making it better to what I'm facing. So I had a pretty standard setup with 2 big panniers and a Shimano, back then like a very cheap Shimano Deoa, I think, I don't even remember. It was more for road, but I actually took it into the Andes and into the mountains, and I remember it being a very robust bike, and my sister is still using it today, so that's quite cool.
Oh, that is awesome. I need you to send me a photo of that bike somehow. In fact, I'd love to see a photo of that bike in Peru and maybe your sister somewhere on it somewhere. I think it's great that when you finish a journey on a bike that it can still be passed on and continue to have adventures.
Yeah, it's now more a city bike, but I can try to find some pictures. Sure.
From memory, actually, Wiebke, when we last spoke, you mentioned you were looking forward to Christmas because your sister and your family are thinking of having Christmas in Cape Town with you there, hopefully at the finish line. I wonder whether or not she'd entertain the thought of bringing the bike and having some adventures with you on a bike in Africa.
Yeah, that would be so amazing to have my sister or anyone from home join me with a bicycle. For my sister, she actually came to Portugal and joined me there in the beginning of this trip, which I also really, really appreciated. And she came to Peru when I was there 5 years ago. So she did join me on certain little parts of the trips that I did. But for this trip, I think it's a bit more complex to actually make it logistically. So we'll see. But I'm definitely open.
Fingers crossed. And gosh, Vipka, I was reflecting what you've done since we last connected, and I was looking at a map of Africa just earlier now, thinking of what's ahead of you, and I can't imagine the stories you'll be able to share with your sister when you see her in person next. For the benefit of our listeners, I last spoke to you in Conakry, you're now in Benin. Where have you travelled through since we last spoke?
Yeah, so from Conakry, after we spoke and after I collected my visa there, we headed straight to Sierra Leone, which is also along the coast. It's one of the poorest countries of West Africa, together with Liberia, which was the following country I crossed. And from Liberia, I went into Cote d'Ivoire and then Ghana, Togo, and Benin. That's where I am now. So I did the whole loop like this, yeah, this corner of Africa, if you want so. And yeah, now I'm here just waiting to continue tomorrow to Nigeria, actually.
Yeah, and it's a real transition time for you, isn't it? Because it's sort of symbolic in that West Africa, you're leaving that behind, you're leaving the coast behind, you're moving in through to Nigeria and Central Africa. That part of your adventure now begins.
Yeah, and I think when we last spoke, I was explaining how it's like a real transformation to really enjoy and to let go of all the fear and all the prejudice we have. And now I really feel comfortable here in West Africa. I know how things go. I know it's very safe. It's incredibly diverse as you continue. There are lots of small and big changes along the way. And yeah, I just know my way around here now. And with Nigeria, with the next border that's just 50 kilometers away, many security questions again come up, which people often, say, like you mentioned, like Africa as in a whole continent is considered to be dangerous, maybe even for women a bit more. And that's definitely one message I have for the West African countries that I'm coming from right now, that this part of West Africa is really safe, especially along the coast. It's well developed. There are some nice things to do for tourists, even, which really surprised me. There's lots to learn, lots to see. And now Nigeria is something different because they do have more security issues. And I think it's the one country on my trip where I have to worry more and be more cautious which routes to take. So this is also why I will leave the coast now and travel towards the capital, which is inland, and it's a big detour. It's about 800 kilometers more, but supposedly more safe. So it's really changing again, and I'm again just in front of this moment too. Okay, I have to let go. I have to just continue my trip. I know others did it just before me, or they're even just in Nigeria right now, and I know I will be fine, but it's just, again, so much information to take on and so much fear I can feel, even from people in Nigeria who are worried about their own situation. So it's going to be intense, it's going to be different, but also it's going to be a big change because I'm going into the mountains. I will be up over 1,800 meters. I will see different wildlife and also experience different climate, which will be super nice and refreshing as well. So yeah, let's see.
Lots of new changes ahead of you. I'm curious, Vipka, this inland route that you're taking, was that always going to be the case? Like when we spoke, were you planning on going inland once you reached Nigeria? Or has that changed since you've sort of received more information on the ground and you're sort of considering the best way to move forward here?
No, it definitely has changed, or more to say, I didn't really have a plan yet because I didn't even know if I would get the visa for Nigeria, which is also a big question mark for many travelers who come until this point. So now I have my visa and I have some contacts in different embassies in Nigeria or people who work there. So I was able to collect more accurate, more up-to-date information. And yeah, it's just pretty clear that it's not going to be the coast anymore. And I just realized now, because I've been really cycling along the coast, I see the ocean every day since pretty much Liberia. So it's been very close to the coastline, and now it does feel like a big change, and that's just very visual, one big aspect of it, as I will continue more east until I go finally south.
Something I was thinking, Vibke, when you're talking about taking all the new information on and fears other people are talking about, but even sort of the curiosity / anxiety or fear that you may even have of what's ahead, is I hope that you reflect back on what you've done and realise going into the unknown and not being sure of what's ahead of you is something you've done time and time again, not just on this trip, on your trip to North Cape, on your trip to South America even. I'm sure there's been many times where things are unknown. I don't want to temper down what you're feeling right now, but I hope that you have that sense of self-assuredness in yourself to know that you are capable of taking these things on.
Yeah, it does feel really good to know that this big chapter is like closing now, and it's been a good story. It's been a happy time. I enjoyed myself. That really gives me lots of confidence for the next a bit more unknown areas, so to say. And I think I do realize it, but it always feels a little bit different right in the moment, because it just become normal, and it's kind of like my day-to-day life to be here to master every border, every day, every whatever it is, every problem. So it feels kind of normal, of course, but yeah, like looking back 2 months in Conakry, it seems really far now. So I do realize, and it's really cool. It's really amazing.
I don't want to jump too much into what's ahead of you, because I feel we'll touch on that soon. I actually want to jump to what you've just done, and I want to learn about what you went through and where you've travelled and what you've experienced there. When I spoke with you, I was mentioning about weather challenges, and you were telling me how the wet season was just about starting, and that coincided with the next chapter in this adventure of yours. Your idea of what riding through the wet season would be like to now reflecting back on what it has been like, did your perception meet up with reality there?
No, actually, not much. So it did rain more than before, because before it was just super dry. But actually, the rain was really well manageable. And also, it's been nice because there were more clouds in the sky. The sun wasn't burning as much. And I actually really enjoy cycling through the rain. So I don't really mind if I get wet. My stuff is in my Oddly bag, so they will stay dry, no worries. And I just really enjoyed a bit the cooler temperatures and not maybe wearing thick layers of sunscreen every day. So it wasn't that bad at all, except in Liberia, where it's really inside the rainforest, the route I took, and there it rains very heavily, and the road conditions were so bad that we really suffered, and it was a big challenge because of the rain. But there, it pretty much always rains, so it's not due to rainy season. And I think people, maybe it's also because of climate change that it's not so extreme anymore, but I do feel like people overestimate the rainy season a bit. At least I did. And I met some overlanders who actually turn around or stop for rainy season, and I don't really know why. Maybe there are some other routes you want to take that are not so good with rainy season, but along the coastline on the bicycle, it was not a big problem so far.
Liberian rainforest jungle experience aside, where you say it's not rainy season, it is just what the environment is there. When you reflect back on the other areas, was there sort of a pattern to the weather as well? I wonder, when I think of rainy season, I think of up in the north of Australia, or I think of Southeast Asia, and I've definitely had guests who say that the weather builds up during the day and then sometime in the afternoon it just begins raining and then that's it. And then it repeats day after day. Was that your experience as well? Or was the rain, it wasn't so constant? You were saying you were seeing blue sky and clouds and sunshine sometimes as well.
Yeah, exactly, like a big mix, but you can see the weather change when the clouds are building up, and then it will rain probably, and it might rain very heavily. And I did change to staying more with locals and in hotels before wild camping, because it's just not so much fun to put the tent in the rain, or yeah, be in the thunderstorm at night. But it's not so bad, like you said. Yeah.
I have actually, when I was thinking just of rainy season in Southeast Asia, I interviewed a guest recently, Scott Sharrock. He's travelled heaps through Southeast Asia, and he actually recommends people travel in the rainy season there in certain countries. Because, again, he says it's not so bad, but also the environment comes to life there. Everything's not so dry anymore and everything's more vibrant and green. So I guess there are benefits, as you say, if you don't mind the wet weather.
Exactly.
Less wild camping, more time staying with locals, staying in other types of accommodation. I'm sure that's been an enriching experience in and of itself.
Yeah, and I didn't really plan to stay so much with locals, but the last 3 capitals, I was with locals or also smaller towns. So really, really lucky people from Europe who come to work here, or people who work for the embassies or the cooperation. Yeah, and it's been also really, really interesting to hear about their professional work and their visions, their political views maybe, and just hear more about development work or other sorts of life, aspects of life. And of course, they have a very, very comfortable life here with staff in the house and a nice pool, and like it's a different world. It's like higher standard of living than we have in Europe, I would say, just like looking at the housing and how they can live their life here. So it was quite the contrast to meet them and to tell them about my stories, and yeah, so really interesting exchange.
There's a big part of your journey which I've reflected on, Vibke, which I imagine, if I take a step back, what you're doing, there's a physical element to it, right? Like you physically have to put in the effort to propel forward, to move along on your bicycle. There's a physical element of fatigue there, but also you get used to it and things like that. But I really think a journey that you're taking now, there's such a bigger mental load to it as well. And it's sort of all the stimulus is new. Like what you're seeing is new, and what you're hearing is new. The countries are new, the cultures are new, and there's learnings that take place that are new. Sometimes those learnings are refreshing and they challenge our perspective. Sometimes they're really challenging for different reasons, and things like privilege are put front and centre of our minds as well. And I wonder, do you feel that? Do you feel that mental strain as well?
Yeah, I do. And especially over the month building up as well, because like I find myself sitting in a restaurant with nice music and pretty lights, and it's a place where people come in the evening to meet their friends. And there was just yesterday a group of women in the restaurant who obviously was a group of friends, and they just had a good time. And then I also find myself like daydreaming about my friends and just going out on a casual evening and enjoying their company. So on the one side, I think it's like a side effect of what you said, like the constant different changes that are happening around me kind of create this longing for being at home, being with people I know, without explaining myself all the time, without being the best version of myself with strangers all the time, without being a good guest, being a good, I don't know, even like being a good cyclist or being whatever in whichever situation I am, but just being me and just having my safe space and my comfort. So this is definitely something I find myself more missing as I continue and as I kind of count the days, maybe even until Christmas. But on the other side, I do also have more like acceptance that I'm here now and this is not what I have. And I actually also learned to not focus on what I don't have so much. I mean, sometimes it still happens, like the situation I just explained, but usually I try to focus on what I actually have, because in Liberia and Sierra Leone, mostly Liberia actually, where we really didn't have much, even not much choice of hotels or restaurants, and you could really tell like decreased standard of living means also decreased diversity, decreased offers, or how do you say it? Decreased just possibilities for people to go and maybe even visit a museum or something. There was no such thing. It was just the road, it was villages, and that's it. And coming now to Ghana and Togo and Benin, the standard of living has been rising a lot. So I find just having the option between fish and chicken is already amazing. And that's really, really great. And not focusing, oh, I don't have pizza, I don't have kebab, I don't have this and this and this, but more like actually appreciating what I have. So it's like kind of a bit of both. So there are like many processes inside me happening at once, and I try to focus on what I have and how well it's actually been going. I wasn't really sick the whole time except now. And yeah, I've just had a good time overall. So that's really, really cool, and I'm super thankful for this.
I guess, like anything, it's an emotional roller coaster. And when you have all the time during the day to think about what you're feeling as well, how do I put this right? You don't have the distractions of, say, a Monday to Friday life of work and then a TV in the evening or something like that. Like, you are all day, every day out there on display. Where you are, I would be fair to say you are the odd one out. You're not seeing many other people that look like you, that have your background, that are on a bike travelling through the landscape. So you're on show all the time, but you're also seeing things which, obviously, because of that, are starkly different to what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine the emotions go up and down because of that as well. There would be moments, I imagine, Wiebke, where you're low or you're lonely and you miss friends or you miss things like pizza and kebab, like you said. But I imagine equally there have been high moments too, I'm sure. I'm sure there's been moments where you said you've been by the coast. I'm sure you've had some amazing moments of, nature that have occurred as well. Or it's an assumption, but, I'm thinking, have you seen amazing sunsets, sunrises, camped in places when you were wild camping, thinking, wow, am I here? Have you had those moments of awe?
Yes, I do. I do have really beautiful moments when I'm on the bike, lots of times, and just even also the most simple things, the people along the road or the animals. Maybe not even most exotic things, but just like the daily life where I often find lots of peace, and it's really like, yeah, it's good to see like a city is busy and people are just doing their thing. I also enjoy just being the observer, but yeah, I feel like it's both. It's like totally normal to have this homesickness and to maybe miss something and feel misunderstood sometimes and not being like, at home, but at the same time finding that it doesn't take so much and I can go really far on just the very basic setup that I have, the very light setup I have. And it's pretty cool. And I think it's also good to be aware and to reflect and to have this time to think about it.
Yeah, and I guess it's a learning journey for different elements as well. What you learn that you can endure, also learning, like you said, stripping things back to basics, and even with basic things in day-to-day life, what you can still do and what you can still observe there as well. There was an element, and I came across this, not so much in an episode, but just speaking with other bike tourers. Obviously, with what I do, I have a friendship circle which includes many amazing people who seem to have travelled nearly everywhere in the world. And one of the concepts they had brought up was this sense of touring fatigue. And it wasn't so much wanting an end to the adventure or the journey that they were on so much, but just a fatigue of absorbing everything new all the time, and just a yearning to just finish a day, be comfortable somewhere, shut off from the world, not have to find out every single thing about the new place they've encountered, not have people question them about where they're going and what they're doing. Does that concept resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I think I can really, really understand. And I've been super lucky that I had some changes in between. And now it feels like I had a longer break because, yeah, I was stuck with visa and I was waiting for someone to come back. And that gave me the opportunity to also visit some touristy sites and take a bit time off. And now the European Cup is on. So you always watch the games and it's kind of a change. I'm also getting some of this feeling, which is really nice. And I also try to keep it a bit diverse in the options I have. And like I said, focus more on what I can make out of it, less than what I don't have at the moment. And also for me, it helps a lot to know that I have 6 more months and then I will be back and I will hug all the people I love at home and be happy to be back. So I think it's both.
It's almost like you've afforded yourself a little mini reset at the moment. It's like you've had a vacation from the journey. you've had some downtime specifically to reset and recharge to push ahead for the next 6 months.
Yeah, it feels like a very nice halftime break that I just took. And I filled my bottles and I stretched my legs, and now it's time for the second half and also a bit of sprint because it will be 8,000 kilometers in 5 months, 5.5 months. So a bit less time to think and sit and wait and more cycling.
Again, the journey ahead of you, there's so much there. I want to go back to Liberia because the country and the conditions there, you spent, I think there was 10 days of 400 kilometres on muddy roads. As I sort of say, when slow travel really becomes that much slower. I saw photos that you had posted up there, and listeners, I encourage you to check out Wiebke's links to her social media. I'll post them in the show notes for you as well, just to see the conditions that I'm describing there. There's elements where I look at it and I would go, if this road turned up on a ride that I was on, it would be sort of a, oh, okay, how am I managing this? And there would probably be laughter and hilarity. I would probably fall in many muddy puddles and wonder how I'm going through this. But I just wondered, Wiebke, what was it like doing that day after day after day after day, where forward momentum, every effort was needed and concerted to just keep moving forward?
Yeah, exactly. It was just a battle. It was just making it at least 20 kilometers forward. And to be honest, I was struggling mentally and physically, and I do not have great advice, but maybe just don't take this road. So I feel like it's been one of the hardest challenges of this trip, and I don't have the calendar sentence or quote to say why it was worth it, because I feel like it was not worth it. No nice restaurants and no nice hotels whatsoever. So we always camped next to or in people's houses, on people's porches. And they were tiny and there were always lots of people around. And it was a big, big challenge. And I don't have much positive about it other than that I finished it and I made it through. And on top of this, it was also my birthday, and I really did not want to be there for my birthday. It was actually not planned at all. I wanted to be in Côte d'Ivoire and enjoy and just have a good time. So yeah, instead I was there in the rain, in the mud, and I guess looking back, I can be proud to have completed it, but at the same time, it was a bit unnecessarily hard, and yeah.
I can only imagine how exhausting it was. Clearly, it wasn't type 2 fun because you're not looking at back at going, oh, it was hard, but I'd do it again. That hasn't happened. And when you mentioned it was your birthday, you didn't want to be there, I could imagine when you're on a journey like this and an event like a birthday occurs, that's especially a time where you think about families and friends and celebrations. So struggling through thick, muddy, wet roads that are so hard to navigate, I can only imagine that would also ramp up the level of mental fatigue combined with physical exhaustion at times too.
Yeah, and also now looking back, I realized that I was already exhausted going into Liberia. It was already quite a struggle in Conakry and in Guinea, and yeah, just not an easy time. And then we decided to go through the rainforest, and it was just the more difficult route. And I should have made my point more clear, maybe, to not do this part. But yeah, it's how it was, and it's all right now. No one got hurt, and Julian and I, we are still friends, so that's good. But was just exhausting for both of us, and we both couldn't enjoy it. And we said it's the hardest thing we've ever done on a bike. And I mean, looking back, you kind of forget the pain and you kind of forget how difficult it actually was. But yeah, it was just a mix of everything. It's a bit unfair because I don't have a very good opinion about Liberia now. And I'm sure there are other more easy routes, and also there are beautiful beaches in the north. But yeah, it's just a roller coaster. So this was definitely my lowest low so far.
It's a real stark case in point where a picture doesn't tell 1,000 words, because if I look at those pictures, I look at things and I go, my goodness, wow, look at those roads. I can't believe you're pushing forward through that. I can't imagine how tiring that is. The mud situation, like there would be an element where you can't cycle because the mud's just continually clogging up on your tyres and stuff. And also, even just the physical element of finishing the end of the day completely muddy. I had it here, actually, Vipka, as a question for you. I don't know, I seem to be fascinated by your Birkenstocks maybe more than most, but how did the Birkenstocks manage the mud situation there?
Yeah, it was a struggle with them, especially pushing uphill in Birkenstocks in the mud is not ideal. And I did carry my hiking boots, so I had to switch to them. Actually, I did it for like 1 or 2 days, and then I actually said, no, it's not gonna help. I will have to switch to my other shoes, and I did. On most of the pictures, I'm actually wearing the boots, which I don't have anymore. So let's hope it's not gonna come back, all the mud.
I was actually wondering at one point, because I was thinking, I'm not sure how Birkenstocks, because there'd be an element where would they just stay in the mud and then your foot would slip out?
Yes.
I was wondering whether there were times where you just went barefoot. Even that would be interesting.
Yeah, but there are big rocks also in the mud, so I don't really recommend at first because it's not like they're not made for rain or anything. So when it was first raining, I changed to my flip-flops, which have even less grip and even less comfort.
Yeah.
But yeah, my hiking boots were the better option, and I'm really surprised that the Birkenstocks survived until here. They're not looking their best anymore, but I hope I can manage and I can do it. I'm a bit afraid of the cold, which is gonna come in the mountains, but so far it's my only pair of shoes now, so I only have the flip-flops and the Birkenstocks. So see if I can make it.
Those Birkenstocks, they have to make it because they can't be thrown out at the end of their life. They survived Liberia with you, and they've probably turned the colour of that Liberian mud too.
Yeah, but it's a bit disappointing because they were already quite earthy from the colors. So you don't really tell the difference if you don't look closely, but they're full of everything that was there on the way. They're very filthy, but still comfortable. And try to wash my feet every night though, because it's not good. Even just walking in them, it's not so great.
I'm sure they have their own funky odour perhaps too. Moving away from that, you did hint how you got rid of the hiking boots. That's something that you've done because you've actually changed your setup as well. You've lost a whole heap of luggage from your bike. You didn't lose it. You consciously made a decision to leave some stuff behind and not travel on with it. And you've changed your setup as well. You've gone from a real traditional looking touring setup to a more streamlined bikepacking setup now, haven't you?
Yeah, it's so nice because with the bike that I chose, I have so much flexibility to put both a rear rack or a front rack. And when I left home, I already knew that I would enjoy more if I had a bikepacking setup. But I did opt out I took the touring setup because I was carrying a laptop and a camera, which would never fit into bikepacking setup. But yeah, I left the laptop behind and made the final adjustments, and I was lucky to receive some parts that allowed me to change. And now I'm really, really happy, and I feel more like me, and just, yeah, very much lighter now with my backpacking setup.
Is there anything that you've left behind that you were sort of in two minds about leaving behind? Is there anything that you've actually missed?
Yeah, I think the first weeks I really missed the camera and the laptop because I was just so used to handling it and to just have the option with my laptop. And it's kind of a very no return decision because I'm not going to buy another laptop and I will not have my data anymore except the stuff that's in the cloud and on my phone. So it was quite difficult, but other than that, I know I can find most of the things I need. If I need a bigger sleeping bag or some long pants or some shoes or whatever, I can find that on the way. So I feel pretty good and really relieved also to not have so much stuff anymore. It's really cool.
It must have felt amazing when you took all that weight off your bike and changed the setup. Like there would be an adjustment to it handles slightly differently, but it must also carry so much more momentum with every pedal stroke as well.
Yeah, and it's so nice that you don't feel so tired anymore because before, like just accelerating with my, I don't know, 45 kilogram setup was just exhausting during the day, and now just everything feels a bit lighter and it's more fun. And also how the weight is more shifted now towards the front, it just feels so much nicer up the hills, and It's good. I'm really happy and organized and looks clean and fresh. And yeah, I'm really, really excited.
Vipka, something else that occurred since we've spoken is you actually did have some friends visit you for a few days in your journey as well. I know we spoke earlier about the emotional side of touring when you're away from friends and family. You can imagine it's a massive, huge emotional lift and positive feel when those friends arrive. What was it like to have familiar faces join you and bring you some home comforts and spend time with you there?
Yeah, my friend Fabi came to visit me, and she also came to Morocco, and it was actually the third time on this trip because she was also there when I left. So she is documenting my trip, and that's really, really cool because she really is deeper into this. It was not just a normal visit, but it's also like someone who really understands and who wants to capture it and who wants to be part of it in a way. So that was awesome. And just having her as a friend who hugs me and who is silly and who loves with, like, who can just have a good time. That was really, really good. But at the same time, it was also not just another holiday and not just a normal trip for her because it was her first time in West Africa and the first time also she actually tried the wild camping and the cycling together with her boyfriend, and they took our bikes and left for an overnighter. So she had many new experiences, and I think in the end it was all overwhelming for her and not easy to comprehend and process because she was just flying in and out, going back to a busy schedule at home and little time to reflect. So it was also a bit painful for me to see her struggling with all the emotions and having a very not so easy time because it's not easy and it's not all beautiful and nice. It's also kind of, you see all different people and you have just the days here were really, really full. So it was both. And then, yeah, letting her go again was, of course, not easy for both of us. And I was from then alone for 2.5 weeks or so until Julian came back from Paris. And yeah, I was also in between the worlds because it's so nice to have a part of home joining you, but at the same time, you have to cope here and you have to adapt. So I'm really lucky I have her and she takes on this crazy journey, but definitely not the easiest place to visit me.
It's possibly been an invaluable taste for her as well of what its life has been like for you. Fabi is going to be documenting this. You are going to have an amazing movie documentary to reflect back on this journey. To go with the one that you have both created together with your journey up to the Nordkap. And I sort of think there's an element with a documentary filmmaker where what they really are is a storyteller, and nothing helps you tell a story better than having a taste and understanding of what's going on. So I think that would have been an invaluable experience for her to feel. And I'm sure the emotions of that will have been captured well too. You mentioned there how you then, when she left, you were solo for 2.5 weeks until Julian has returned. I guess, is that an unexpected moment? Because you set off on this journey solo, and you've said many times to me before that while you're comfortable travelling solo, you're not adverse to the idea of travelling with people that you meet along the way. You and Julian now travelled quite a distance with each other. You had the Liberian experience together as well. Julian went home, but now he has returned to join you again, hasn't he?
Yeah, if I can speak for him, he was very much fed up with West Africa and with the heat and just the daily struggle. And he was very certain to go home, fly to Paris, change some parts on his bike and continue his journey in Kenya and go east. But yeah, exactly. So it was quite surprising when he decided or was convinced to come back and to continue together towards Nigeria because he was also, I think, more scared than me to go through Nigeria. I have this goal to ride from Germany to South Africa. And for him, it's more flexible. There is no A to B. There is more, I want to cycle around the world and see lots of places, but enjoy and make nice, beautiful memories and pictures and have a good time and not bother to go through critical areas. So for him, it was a struggle too. decide what he wants. And in the end, he came back. And I think we were both pretty happy about it because we are a good team, and it's just so much easier to enjoy together and to just move forward like this than it is to go solo here, because as a European, you're always in the minority here, of course, and it's very hard to just share any of this, what's happening, what's going on, and to put words to it. And so it's really nice for me that he came back and we can continue together, especially in Nigeria, Cameroon, and Congo. I feel a lot better not to be alone, and it's not a challenge. I think it's not a good challenge to go alone through like countries that are super dangerous just for the fun, and it's not fun. So why not continue together? And it's really, really special. And we both are, I think, solo travelers at heart, and we'll always go back to solo traveling someday. But for now, we have our Congo visa together, so it will definitely be Nigeria, Cameroon, and Congo. And let's see. I think the direction is pretty clear where we go from there. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about it.
Hi everyone, just taking a little quick break from the interview there to say a huge hello and welcome to all of you who have just newly discovered Seek Travel Ride. Recently there's been a lot of new followers and fans of the show tune into some episodes, and it struck me that with a podcast that is now over a year and a half long in releasing weekly episodes, you've got quite a lot of guest stories to catch up on. I definitely invite you to take the time after this episode to look at the back catalogue, scroll through and find out some more stories that you may enjoy listening to. We have guests going on bikepacking adventures across countries and continents, others who are cycle touring for years at a time, going all around the world, and yet more guests who are pushing the limits in the space of ultra-endurance cycling and seeing what is possible in events such as the Tour Divide and the Transcontinental, as well as many, many more. No matter the journey, no matter the age, we have some interesting guest stories in amongst that episode list, and I'm pretty proud to say that in that guest listing now, there are over 50 women featured. So for those of you checking out for some solo female inspiration, there are more than 50 amazing women to choose from to listen to. Lastly, if you are enjoying listening to Seek Travel Ride and you want to support the show, the easiest way to do so is to click the Buy Me a Coffee link, which you will see in the podcast show notes. That helps to keep my microphone turned on and me producing these weekly episodes for you as well. Okay, there's enough of that now. Let's get back to the episode. I think something that you said there is really important to sort of point out as well. Sometimes there's no point on just going ahead with something that's challenging just for, the adventure. I think it's right to actually give yourself moments of pause, take stock of what's ahead, and actually think of if I want to do this, what's going to be the best way to do this for me? And I'm not saying that you definitely couldn't travel there on your own. I'm fairly confident knowing what you've done, you definitely have the ability to, but it's also the correct decision for you to say, I want to actually travel through this area with someone. And it sounds like for Julian as well, the companionship of being able to travel in an area like this with someone who has some sort of common ground is also important too. I think that's a brilliant serendipitous moment. I think it's an unplanned thing. You didn't know this would happen at the start of your trip, but that's a great story in itself.
Yeah, and I also feel like we of course tend to give more credit to like solo travelers who go and do it by themselves, and I mean me too, and especially as a woman when you are with a man, it's kind of, I don't know, people don't maybe take you so seriously anymore, which sucks because actually when I meet couples, and I just met a couple in Ghana, I think was it Ghana? Yeah. And I was really, really amazed by both of them as individuals. And I asked them, hey, do you realize how amazing it is what you do? And I asked them the same question at the same time. And the first to reply was him saying, yeah, I know, it's pretty awesome what we do. We cycle through West Africa. And then she said, I don't really know. Like, there are so many people who do this. And, I don't know how much credit we can actually, it's just pretty average. And I really realized that there's such a big difference in how much we celebrate ourselves and how much we see that it's actually pretty crazy awesome what we do. And just, I also changed my opinion about it, my opinion about couples traveling together through these kind of circumstances. So I feel like it's very, very important to give credit to everyone. And if you want to go solo, that's awesome. That's really crazy and cool. And if you want to find someone on the way and you are willing to do these compromises and to maybe wait for a week or to make some agreements together, then that's awesome too. And that's really a part of life. And we're not on this planet to be alone. So yeah, for me, it's the right choice for sure, and no regrets. And we are still two individuals who have different opinions about things and different preferences and different ideas. But we manage pretty well and we have a lot of respect for each other. So that's nice.
I certainly think what you're doing, what Julian's doing, what you're both doing is awesome. In fact, shout out, Julian, if you're listening to this, I'd love to speak to you as well and have you on as a guest one day. I'd have to do it in English though, because my French is not quite so good, so I'm learning.
Yeah, we also speak English, so no worries. And I think I would also be a big fan of hearing him speak because he actually doesn't talk so much, but maybe you will, with your questions and you as a person, you might get some more answers.
The challenge is accepted on my half. Julian, it's up to you. Wiebke, something I did want to speak with you about, and it's a real stark difference here, is your journey through West Africa took you through places which you had physical discomfort, but then there's also the discomfort of realising where you're in, understanding the history of the places you're in. And you travelled through a lot of regions which were severely impacted in history with the slave trade. And I took pause every time you posted about that because something I thought was, I'm not sure the unease that goes with knowing what's gone on here. It's an uncomfortable history, but I really appreciated the fact that you were bringing that uncomfortable history to so many of us who maybe have an idea of the slave trade, but really no comprehension of what it actually would have been. And you visited slave museums, you visited areas where so many people were kept in horrendous conditions to be shipped off. And I wanted to know, did you have a comprehension much of that before you arrived there? And what was it like dealing with that while you were there as well? Because there's sort of big issues, big feelings, I imagine, that you would have had there.
Yeah, good question. I definitely didn't have much of an idea before. I wasn't aware that this is a big part of history of this coast, especially. But visiting these places and just seeing and being guided through there was overall very enriching experience because I can put another puzzle piece to every kind of part that's connected to West Africa and the people and the present. So it was really informative and helpful for me. And the way they do it is they're not walking you around and blaming someone or, I don't know, they're just like showing you this is what's happened and they give you rough numbers. And just in Ghana, there are 47 slave castles or places, basically prisons, where they kept the slaves to be shipped to Europe and mostly to America and Barbados, the Caribbean. So mostly they were all transatlantic slave traders, but from like the castles were built from Europeans, from the British and the Portuguese. And I don't know, it was like changing all the time who was owner of this, but basically, yes, that's roughly the story. And I found it that was a very, very, I was super thankful because going through Liberia and Sierra Leone, I didn't see any of it. And I know that there are some places like this in Senegal, but I missed them because I wasn't on the coast there and I didn't see it. And yeah, just in Ghana, because it's so close, like every 10 kilometers, there's one of these buildings. Yeah, I was just really, really happy to do some head work as well, like to understand. And I think we still feel this today as in forms of racism and other forms, and so connected to so many things like the church and just the whole capitalism that's still like the power distributions worldwide that it's just incredible what damage it was and how much work is still to be done. And I think this is just like the minimum for me as a traveler going through this area to just understand maybe a tiny bit.
There was something that I came across that you said which really struck me about how you were feeling through there as well. You said, I'm not only jumping from one village, city, or country to the next, I'm also pedaling in between different worlds, the worlds of the locals and the worlds of the expats. Colonial history seems to be so far away, but past colonial structures are still there. It's hard to put into words. I visited 2 slave castles. I talked to a group of women who work on a dump. The next day, I go shopping in an overpriced supermarket and I drink a flat white in a mall and see so many extremes every day. I was trying to put myself in your shoes there because you have this stark reminder of this history, and as you were saying there's different worlds are all coexisting all together. And I feel like you said there, a phrase you used when you were talking was you were doing some head work, and I can only imagine the sort of things that you're thinking when you're realising these as well.
Yeah, and it's just also so obvious that it can be really painful and heartbreaking. And like these women who work there on a dump, they earn 250 like euros a day, and I don't know, it's not even what I would spend for this flat white, and like it's just all in the same, I don't know, 100-kilometer distance, and it's even like more connected because also with the dump, they are actually working with the trash they get from Europe and from other places. So it's not only their trash, it's also our trash. They get all the secondhand clothing and they just have to find a room for our fast fashion garbage. And no one needs, I don't know, 100 tank tops from Shein here. Or I don't know, like it's just very, very obvious inequality and bullshit in the end. It's so destructive and so painful to see this. And at the same time, I do find some comfort because I can go and speak to the women and they are also going on with their lives and they are coping. And humans are so incredibly strong to be coping and to manage. And people here are just, for me, it's crazy what we complain about at home when I see the reality here. And it's like so cliche to say this, but it does give me some hope also because, yeah, they are going on with their lives and it's not easy and change is happening super slow and sometimes it's not going in the right direction with the politicians here and I don't have answers and solutions on how to solve all of this. But yeah, it's just very enriching to experience it and to be aware and to just be close to this. And me on my bike, I'm with them. I'm stopping in the same places to have lunch and I'm on their level more or less. Of course, I am super privileged, but I do get a feeling and a glimpse of what's going on and yeah, just to see it. And it's very intense.
Yeah, hugely. Like I said, when I was reading through those posts, I was trying to put myself in your shoes there, but also really appreciative of the fact that I was learning so much as well. I know about the slave trade growing up, but I didn't learn details about it. I have an idea of the poverty in places that you're traveling through, but I haven't visually seen it, and you are there. And I guess often it can be quite overwhelming, especially when you say you're aware of your privilege. At times we feel privileged but also powerless. I think there is a power in information, in learning lessons, making more people aware to make choices, to make changes, even at our own small individual levels as well. You wouldn't be the first long-distance bicycle traveller I've spoken to who, at the end of their journey, says, we already have too much stuff. We don't need 20 T-shirts. We don't need all these possessions. Like, you get an understanding and you probably have already made changes in your own mannerisms. The more we talk to other people, perhaps the more people do that as well. I'm not saying it's the answers either. I don't want this to become a philosophical podcast, but I think it would be wrong to speak to someone who's gone through this experience and seen what you've seen and not even bring it to more people's attention as well.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of my responsibility, I feel like, or everyone's responsibility to be more aware about the impact we have and about the connection we have with each other. And that's a nice thing about the bike, because you do feel so connected to so many places, and you're connecting dots, and you connect. Now I was able to connect a bit of history, etc. So it's really, really nice, and I think we can all learn from it. And I would love to do more about it. Of course, yeah, not easy. And I also have this responsibility of saying correct things. And it's a big, big debate, I guess. And I learned to be more brave, and I learned to speak up more for this kind of things. But with the growing audience, it's also sometimes a bit scary, so to say. But yeah, it's important. And we all have our little things that we can do, and in the end feels good to be able to act and to share this.
Well, if it means anything to you on a really simplistic level, I certainly appreciated being able to see and follow your journey through there, and learnt a lot from you as well. So thank you from me anyway.
Thanks.
It's funny, Vibke, whenever I go into deeper topics like this, it always feels really trivial what I would move on to with my next question. But I do want to ask you a question I've already asked you before, and that is, I want you to tell me about one day on your trip. You've had a few days since we last spoke. I want you to choose whichever day you want and take me and the listeners there.
Okay. Like I already told you, it's never easy for me to pick one day, because really the last 3, 4, 5 weeks have been so different every day. But let's go to the day where I left Ghana and I went into Togo. Because I woke up on a little farm of 2 Belgian people who were actually not at home, but I was there with only their employees, and I was sleeping on their couch in their nice house just next to the Volta River, which is a beautiful big river going through Ghana towards the sea. And it was really peaceful and a nice morning. I made some coffee, packed my bike, and I left quite early because I was going to stay with a family in Lomé in Togo. And the woman who invited me, Camilla, she had to leave for a trip. She was going back home to Germany. In the afternoon at 4 o'clock or so, she had to leave the house. So I was kind of chasing the clock, and I had 130k to go, I think. And yeah, it was a quite beautiful ride because it was along the lagoon. I was surrounded by water. Was very little traffic because there's also a new highway. So I was just enjoying the ride a lot. And starting early in the morning is always good because for some reason you have more energy and more time. And I had a goal, and I had a nice lunch break. I was just about, I think, 2 weeks in Ghana, so I knew what to order for food, and I had some beans and spaghetti and salad and like a big mix on the street, just some good street food. And before that, I even had some nice snacks, so I was like really, I felt like in my element to resupply and knowing how things go, and people speak English in Ghana, so it was really easy for me. And then I made it to the border, and border crossings are always a bit nervous and challenging, and I was by myself, so I had to be extra careful and checked everything 3 times. And the visa was online, so I already had printed my form because it's online, but you still have to print it. And just making my way slowly through from one office to the next office, being guided by some policemen and just running around. And then I was there it was like 30 degrees, super warm. And I was standing at the counter for my Togo stamp. And then Camilla, the woman where I was supposed to go, she came in the booth into the counter, and she was like it was a big surprise for me because I didn't look on my phone. There were no phones allowed, but she found me there. So it was super nice to, like, the first time I was actually like picked up from the border, and her house was just 1 kilometer after the border. And her husband and her son were waiting in the car, and so they kind of guided me to their house, and it was like a little palace for me with a big gate and security. And I come in, and there was a nanny and a housekeeper and everyone super friendly, a big pool, and they showed me my room, and I felt like, wow, like I'm just coming from Ghana, and this is like a different world where everything is new again. I can speak my mother tongue and eat spätzle for dinner. So yeah, a very, very full day, and I could spend 1 hour with Camilla before she had to take her plane. and just get a good rest after a long day on the bike in the very best company. Yeah.
That is a really full day. There were a few things that I thought of straight away. You felt in your element. You knew the routines. You had a long distance to go, but you'd left early and you felt fresh. You knew what to order, and it was hot, but you were making your way through. And then I could only imagine how happy you would have been at the border to see Camilla turn up as well. That would have been fantastic. And then to finish the day relaxing as well after such a long day. I always think nothing makes you sleep the best than having such a long day that was full. But I'm so glad that you chose a happy day to talk about, because I could imagine that you've had lots of intense moments. And often when I ask people to tell me about one day of their trip, they'll tell me about the most extreme thing that's ever happened. And I think it was actually you, Wiebke, when we first spoke, saying things don't need to happen all the time. The days where things go smoothly are just as good to remember. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
You've reached the halfway mark. Cape Town is the goal for Christmas. I want to quickly ask you, what are you looking forward to the most?
It's always, I guess, a bit the same, because I'm always just focused on what's next, and I'm just really happy to continue tomorrow, to be back on the road, and hopefully to get in the flow, because it will be 30 days visa for 2,000 kilometers, so we actually have to keep going, and I'm really excited about just the fact that we have like this little cycling challenge after a few weeks of less cycling, and will be really, really nice. So I'm excited about Nigeria and every other country that follows.
I'm super excited to be keeping an eye on your socials and keeping an eye on your stories and your updates to see what comes across. I'm so thankful that we've been able to connect today to fill in some of those gaps. And it would be amazing, Wiebke, if we connect again further down the line and to hear about more of the adventures that have unfolded with what is ahead of you as well. I normally finish my show asking the same two questions, and I've already asked them for you. So I've actually got them a little bit different, just to keep the variety, the spice of life here. The first one, Wiebke, is you are given a choice one day and you can choose to cycle forever down sodden wet season roads or into a constant headwind through the soaring heat in the Sahara. Which one are you going to choose?
Yeah, the rainy season. Headwinds are no fun.
Oh my gosh. I really honestly thought that maybe when you were describing that experience in Liberia, it wasn't fun yet, that maybe you're going to choose the headwinds, but no, wet season wins out. Okay. Final question for you. You are given the choice and you can choose to cycle through the rest of Africa on your own, or you can cycle with other people. Which one are you choosing?
With other people. It's easy.
There we go. Well, Wiebke Lühmann, you are halfway mark. Central Africa is calling. Your 30 days in Nigeria is coming up. I am really looking forward to seeing what's ahead of you in this adventure as you continue going south all the way to that southern tip in Cape Town. I wish you tailwinds, I wish you sunshine, I wish you variety in food and many pleasant experiences as well. I also hope you can reflect on your own self and be super proud of what you are doing and what you are continuing to do each day. Thank you so much for once again sharing your stories and experiences here on the show for us at Seek Travel Ride.
Thank you so much, Bella. I really enjoyed talking to you for the second time, and speak soon.
Well, listeners, I really hope that you enjoyed that extra little snapshot that we have been given there, chatting with Wiebke, to fill in the gaps between Conakry and Benin, and to hear about what's ahead of her on the road down to Cape Town as well. I really get a sense of speaking with Wiebke that she is really taking note of more than just what she's seeing when she's travelling through the landscapes. What I really loved about chatting with Wiebke there again was something that I was thinking is one of the key components of a great bike tour, and that is the term flexibility. There were a few times there where Wiebke has talked about changing things up, whether it was choosing which roads to take in Liberia, whether it was changing her equipment setup, to whether it was also the approach of deciding it's actually 100% okay to decide not to travel solo and to adventure with someone together as a team of two. I think that flexibility is a great thing to have in your back pocket, and that to not be fixed to a concept or an idea of how things must be in a rigid structure to achieve a goal. I think Wiebke can take a lot of learnings from this as well. And as a little aside, I'll be interested to see what state those Birkenstocks are in by the time Wiebke reaches Cape Town. For those of you who missed out on the first episode of Wiebke's show, I have provided a link to it in the show notes, so you can also listen to it as well and hear about the start of this journey and a little bit more to the backstory of Wiebke and her bike adventures as well. If you are enjoying listening to Seek Travel Ride, you can help this podcaster out by supporting the show on Buy Me a Coffee. I have provided a link in the show note. Every small financial contribution helps so that I can interview these guests each and every week and bring their stories to your ears, giving you that sense of wanderlust and inspiration to take your own bike adventure as well. Thank you to everybody who has supported the show on Buy Me a Coffee so far. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.